Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have the Baker's Dozen, 13 articles for you here this morning, and all of the URLs are in the description of this video for your convenience. The first one is off of Conservative Tribune. It says, this just in, North Korea wants to reduce the White House to ashes. A threat to the United States to come from Kim Jong-un's regime. An editorial by North Korea's state news agency warned that the White House would be reduced to ashes. According to the UK Sunday Express, the 2,000-word editorial condemned the Trump administration for its deployment of naval vessels to the region and promised forced reunification with South Korea. This is a stern warning to the U.S. imperialists and their stooges running amok for aggression and war moves, the editorial read. The world will clearly witness how the crime-woven history of the U.S. imperialist will be over, how remaining days of the South Korean puppet forces will come to an end, and how national reunification, the cherished desire of the Korean nation, will be achieved. States, the editorial said, is a hotbed of evil. Therefore, the regime promised an indiscriminate preemptive nuclear strike upon it to make sure America would be something that cannot come back to life again. The editorial also claimed that 30,000 U.S. soldiers had taken part in recent drills with Japan and South Korea. That would be over 1/4 of all enlisted soldiers, an absurd claim, and referred to American soldiers as murderous ogres, robbers, air pirates, and warriors who master the occult arts. To be funny, that last part makes our men and women in uniform sound like characters from Mortal Kombat, from a regime that has nuclear weapons. Previous editorial printed last week by the KCNA accused the United States and South Korea of masterminding a plot to assassinate Kim Jong-un, according to Rutgers. The Central Intelligence Agency of the U.S. and the Intelligence Service of South Korea in the world hatched a vicious plot to hurt the supreme leadership of the DPRK, and those acts have been put into the extremely serious phase of implementation after crossing the threshold of the DPRK. While these screeds are ungrammatical enough that they sound like they were scribbled off in crayon, it pays to remember that North Korea can't afford crayons, just nuclear weapons, determined to wave in our faces like a gun. President Trump is going to have to do something, and he's going to have to do it fast. While they may not be able to turn the White House into a pile of ashes, they seem intent on turning something into a pile of ashes. The article I have is off of Conservative Tribune. North Korea snatches American professor. An American professor working at a university in Pyongyang has been detained by the North Korean government, CNN reported. North Korean state media agency KCNA reported that Kim Hak-song of Pyongyang University of Science and Technology was detained Saturday because of what it said were hostile acts toward the regime. Became the second American professor from that school to be detained by the North Korean government in the past month. Kim Hak-song was described by KCNA as a man who was doing business in relation to the operation of Pyongyang University of Science and Technology. The school reported that he was involved with agricultural development on its farm. The relevant authority is currently carrying out a detailed investigation into the crime of Kim Hak-song, the school said in a statement. Kim was born in China but educated in the United States. Kim, who is of Korean descent, as being committed to improving North Korea's agricultural economy. He was very diligent, determined to help people in North Korea, classmate David Kim said. On April the 22nd, another American professor from the same school, Kim Sang-dok, at Pyongyang International Airport on suspicion of acts of hostility aimed at overthrowing the country, Fox News reported. There has of yet been no public response to Kim's detention by the Trump administration. While one respects any American citizen with the guts to travel to North Korea, it's pretty obvious that Kim Hak-song was woefully naive about the nature of North Korean regime and how desperate they were for any sort of bargaining chip with the Americans, including kidnapping citizens held as political prisoners. The naivete has cost him his freedom, and pray it does not cost him his life. It's yet another sign that the Kim regime removal needs to be a top priority of Donald Trump's administration. For Breitbart, the simple explanation for Trump's firing of James Comey when he did. Articles here about Comey, so it'll give you a kind of an overview of well, the rumor mill has been going all day yesterday. It says the case for firing former FBI Director James Comey has been made at length by both Democrats and Republicans. At last, Republicans were angry that he failed to indict Hillary Clinton, and Democrats were angry that he made a case for doing so. Democrats were furious that Comey revealed that he had reopened the investigation into Clinton, and in March, Republicans were angry that he disputed President Donald Trump's wiretapping claims. Comey was arguably dealt by the Obama administration. Regardless, within the Department of Justice and beyond, Comey had, perhaps with good intentions, undermined his credibility. But why fire Comey now? The answer is simple. The day before President Barack Obama's former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, repeated under oath what he told NBC News' Chuck Todd on Meet the Press on March the 5th. Evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. That gave Trump administration the breathing room to dismiss Comey not have before. It is true that Trump did not have an attorney general and assistant attorney general in place until relatively late, but he could have acted before then. Recommendation certainly adds weight to his decision. Put simply, if Trump had fired Comey while there were still serious questions about Russia, then it would have been more plausible to accuse him of trying to interfere in the investigation or cover up whatever happened. It is now clear that nothing, in fact, happened. And former acting attorney general, former acting attorney general Sally Yates, gun and produced nothing but viral videos of Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas. The more Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat of New York, and his media allies try to hype the Comey firing and revive the Russia conspiracy theory, the more they help Trump by making fools of themselves. BizPac Review. Senator John McCain disappointed over Comey firing. Senator John McCain remained true to his anti-Trump rhino ways by slamming the president for firing FBI Director James Comey. McCain said he's disappointed that Comey, an Obama appointee, was fired and fueled the liberal media narrative that the firing was related to FBI investigation into alleged collusion between Trump campaign and Russia, for which there is still no evidence. While the president has the legal authority to remove the director of the FBI, I'm disappointed in the president's decision to remove James Comey from office, McCain said in a statement. James Comey is a man of honor and integrity, and he has led the FBI well in the extraordinary circumstances. For a special congressional committee to investigate Russia's interference in the 2016 election, the president's decision to remove the FBI director only confirms the need and the urgency of such a committee. Surprising that McCain speaks glowingly of Comey, who has donated to his political campaign. This isn't the first time that the Arizona senator has undermined President Trump and publicly bashed him. In February, McCain shamelessly brown-nosed the media and bleated the Democratic talking point comparing Trump to a dictator. Interestingly, McCain's longtime pal, Senator Lindsey Graham, supported Trump's decision, saying the country and the FBI needed a fresh start. Graham put out a tweet that says, given the recent controversies surrounding the director, I believe a fresh start will serve the FBI and the nation well. President Trump and others pointed out that many liberals who are now outraged by Comey's firing had demanded that he be fired several months ago when they blamed him for Hillary Clinton's election loss. Trump put out a tweet that says the Democrats have said some of the worst things about James Comey, including the fact that he should be fired, but now they play so sad. Crying Chuck Schumer stated recently, I do not have confidence in James Comey any longer, then acts so indignant. Dave Rubin put out a and so maybe someone can explain, didn't Dems want Comey fired for interfering with the election? Now he's fired and Dems are going berserk. This is why people are turning out. The outrage machine is his ruining people's ability to think clearly or critically. GOP in 2020 put out a tweet that says CNN breaking, Democrats take break from calling for Comey's firing, become outraged by Comey's firing. Others noted that it was John McCain who had leaked the bogus unverified dossier claiming Russia had compromising information on Donald Trump. Now, the now discredited dossier kickstarted the Trump-Russia investigation, even though most of the claims were unsubstantiated and have since been debunked. And there's a bunch more tweets in this if you care to pull those up and read those. The next one is off of BizPac Review. It says House Dems demand probe Comey firing docs be preserved, hidden from Senator Sessions and the White House. The Democrat contingent on the House Judiciary Committee has demanded that the FBI and the Department of Justice preserve any and all files having to do with former FBI Director James Comey firing and his Russia investigation. In light of today's shocking decision by the president to fire FBI Director Comey, it is imperative that you take several immediate steps to protect the integrity of your investigation into Russian efforts to influence our recent election and related matters, the group wrote in a letter sent to both departments, The Hill reported, which consisted of Democratic representatives Gerald Nadler, Steve Cohen, John Conyers Jr., Sheila Jackson Lee, David Salente, and Zoe Lofgren, requested for the preservation of the department's FBI criminal investigation into matters related to Russian interference in our federal elections, collusion with individuals associated with the Trump campaign, and associated matters, and demanded those files be made off limits to the White House. The Democrats specifically asked for Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who, along with Deputy Attorney Rod Rosenstein, recommended Comey's firing be kept away from those files because he recused himself from the probe into alleged Russian interference in the election. The group also asked for the preservation of materials related to Director Comey's termination by the president, so that it may be subsequently reviewed by appropriate members of Congress and in connection with any subsequent investigations. The Democrat group tried to tie the firing of Comey to Russian probe and used that as to strengthen their request. Our request is even more important given that a series of White House efforts to influence the investigation and the media coverage of it, that the Trump administration cannot be allowed to interfere any further in this investigation, they wrote. This includes White House efforts asking the FBI to knock down White House Russia stories earlier this year, separate efforts by the White House to leak information to Representative Nunes so that he could seek to justify President Trump's unfounded accusations that President Obama tapped his phones, as well as President's decision to fire Preet Bharara, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, who had jurisdiction over investigations involving Trump Tower, even after the president promised Mr. Bharara he could keep his job, the letter read. Unfortunately, we are also concerned about the continued involvement of the Attorney General in these issues, including his role in firing Director Comey. The article is off of BizPac Review. It says, report, Comey fired for not saying there's no ties. And, well, gee whiz. What's going on with this side? See if we can get this to work with me here. There's always one in there. Seems to be one that wants to give us fits. A hamster's running in the wheel. Here we go. Former FBI Director James Comey was fired Tuesday, in part because he would not publicly state that there were no links between Trump administration and Russia, according to a source inside the White House. A person with knowledge of conversations about Comey's dismissal told the Wall Street Journal that there was growing frustration among President Donald Trump's associates that the former FBI director would not tamp down questions about the president's alleged connection to Russia. He refused to say those three little words, "there's no ties." Told WSJ about Trump's decision to fire Comey without any forewarning. Comey was appointed in 2013 and had not yet served 6 years of what should have been a 10-year term. While I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation, I nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you are not able to effectively lead the Bureau, the president wrote in a letter to Comey notifying him of his dismissal. We find new leadership for the FBI that restores public trust and confidence in its vital law enforcement mission. Of course, also said Trump was upset about what he viewed as the former director's in front of cameras and questioned whether Comey could be independent on media profile. Another White House aide described the former FBI director as a show horse. Oh, and there's James. He's becoming more famous than me, Trump said to Comey during a January reception for law enforcement. The next article is off of BizPac Review. WikiLeaks offers James Comey a new job. A surprising job offer rolled in for former FBI Director James Comey on Tuesday afternoon, mere hours after President Donald Trump fired him without warning. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange says consider Comey for a position at the organization's Washington, D.C. office, where they are now unemployed bureau chief might continue his mission to properly investigate the U.S. government. Assange put out a tweet says WikiLeaks would be happy to consider hiring James Comey to help lead its D.C. office should he like to investigate the U.S. government. WikiLeaks, a long thorn in the side of U.S. intelligence agencies for publishing leaked classified information, also offered to help Comey or any other FBI officials get to the bottom of why the former director was let go. WikiLeaks put out a tweet saying if James Comey or any other former or current FBI officers have information as to why he was fired, we want to help. Assange's offer is a surprising turnabout for WikiLeaks, which claimed in March that Comey misled Congress about the organization's release of Democratic Party emails during the 2016 presidential campaign. Comey is no fan of WikiLeaks. He dismissed the group as intelligence porn, sensitive information about sources and methods without regard to who the disclosure might affect. Despite the bitter history, the potential of working with former government official with knowledge of America's most sensitive secrets was apparently too much for Assange to resist. He predicted a trove of leaks about the Trump administration from friends and foes alike, and even suggested that Comey could replace the man who fired him. Comey's firing will be an extraordinary boon for transparency as his loyalists leak and the administration counterleaks. Will he run for 2020? Assange put in a tweet. Whatever his plans for future employment, Comey is likely to take Assange up on his ironic offer, given the intelligence community's designation of WikiLeaks as a hostile intelligence service. CIA Director Mike Pompeo on April the 13th declared WikiLeaks a tool of U.S. adversaries bent on harming the American government. It's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is, a non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia, he told an audience at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. The former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, concurred that the assessment during his Senate testimony Monday. Clapper told Republican Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska that WikiLeaks is absolutely a non-nation state intelligence service and a known propaganda platform for Russia. Next article. This is off of Disobedient Media. It says sources claim that Comey firing could result in release of documents, potential new Clinton probe. In the wake of Donald Trump's dismissal of FBI Director James Comey, citing serious mistakes and mishandling of Hillary Clinton investigation, emerging information appears to indicate that the aftermath of Comey's firing, the FBI intends to begin releasing documents on the Clinton investigation, and the Department of Justice may request a second look at the investigation. This afternoon, the White House announced that James Comey would be removed as director of FBI upon recommendation of Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Rosenstein cited Mr. Comey's public announcement of his findings in July of 2016, derogatory statements he made about Secretary Clinton at the time, his letter to Congress informing them of his decision to reopen the FBI's investigation into Mrs. Clinton after uncovering emails on personal devices belonging to former Congressman Anthony Weiner, among other actions Comey had taken, which the Deputy Attorney General described as a violation of Comey's obligation to preserve, protect, and defend the traditions of the FBI. Upon news of Comey's removal, Julian Assange tweeted that a source from within the FBI had informed him that the Bureau would begin leaking documents from the investigation. He urged the FBI to release documents in full to prevent any misrepresentations by the press. On the heels of Assange's announcement, the additional source claimed that the Deputy Attorney General will now oversee new Clinton probe following Comey's dismissal, and would do so in close proximity to acting FBI Director Anthony McCabe for lack of trust. If confirmed, the reports indicate that Comey's firing represents a renewed focus on information pertaining to the investigation into Hillary Clinton, after the previous one was criticized by both supporters and detractors of former Secretary of State and Senator, both of them painted the investigation as being either politically motivated or hampered by alleged attempts to cover up evidence of wrongdoing. The article is off of Liberty Writers. Trump was right. CIA Director Clapper just leaked something huge about government spying. The Senate hearing for former Attorney General Sally Yates about Russian election interference. However, the real shock came when the senators were questioning retired CIA Director James Clapper. Clapper served under Obama and has been accused of being the president's go-to guy for spying on Americans. The senator asked Director Clapper, "Have you used unmasking on President Trump, any of his campaign staff, or U.S. senators?" Clapper bowed his head in shame and said yes. Wow, just wow. The really sad thing here is that the media will not even bother covering this. Sure, they'll talk about the day, or try this again, they will talk all day about a bunch of conspiracy theories linking Trump to Russia. When the head of the CIA admits publicly doing something unconstitutional, however, nobody says a damn thing. Luckily, there are people like you and me who actually want to know the truth and help get it out there. That's why it's up to us to show President Donald Trump was 100% right about them unmasking politicians for their own gain. And they have some live stream in this URL of the hearing if you want to pull it up and listen to it for yourself. Here's off of BizPack Review. It says, under a minute, Mexico nationals laugh as reporters show how easy it is to cross the border. Two freelance reporters went to the southern border to show just how effortless it can be to cross it. Joe Biggs and David Rodriguez of Borderland Alternative Media recorded themselves as they scanned a portion of the border between Mexico and the U.S. The reporters walked along the dirt road and pointed to a nearby building in Mexico to illustrate how close they were to our southern neighbors. Rodriguez, who lives in El Paso, Texas, said of the border, "I didn't even know this little area existed." "We're in America right here," Rodriguez said. That green sign says Mexico." The pair walked along until Rodriguez decided to cross the border, a feat that took place in under a minute. Biggs asked him to find someone on the other side to talk to, while he explained that there is border fencing miles down on either side, but the area where he stood has been left wide open. Rodriguez soon reappeared with a Mexican national willing to demonstrate the border crossing ease. That's just how easy it is, Biggs said, and added that the open border needed to have a light shined on it. A bit later, Biggs and Rodriguez met up with more Mexican nationals and had a laugh at the absurdity of the literal line on the ground that they said represented the border between the two countries. And there's some video in this if you want to watch it. It says, meanwhile, Biggs videoed that the highlighted under a minute border crossing got the attention of Trump supporters who want to see him build the wall. InfoWars has a tweet that says, Rambo Biggs video not working for me. Hope it's only my connection. Keep shining the light on this issue. Don't let Trump fold. David Ross Spielman put out a tweet saying, that's scary. We need that wall as soon as possible. Another one puts out a tweet, says, oh my God, woke, never knew. Thank you for pointing this out. And there's, let's see, the last tweet here says, real Donald Trump, you have to see this. Please cross border and under or people cross border in under a minute. Next article is off of Fellowship of the Minds. It says, Mexico is world's second most deadly country after Syria. 2 days ago, I posted about the shocking violent protests and massive looting across Mexico. Over a 20% gas price hike, which took place 4 months ago in January, but which went unnoticed by our media, although Mexico is America's southern neighbor. There is a video of the looting in a Mexican Walmart if you want to watch it. Police officer was killed on January 4th while trying to prevent robberies at a gas station in Mexico City. 3 people were killed amidst looting in the eastern state of Veracruz on January the 5th. Now we have statistics confirming our perception of Mexico as a lawless, dangerous country. Mark Champion reported for Bloomberg May the 9th of 2017 that according to the annual Armed Conflict Survey by the International Institute for Strategic Studies, Mexico has surpassed Iraq and Afghanistan to become the world's second most deadly conflict zone after Syria. In 2016, the world's 5 deadliest countries are Syria with 50,000 fatalities, Mexico with 23,000 fatalities, Iraq 17,000 fatalities, Afghanistan 16,000 fatalities, Yemen 7,000 fatalities. What distinguishes Mexico from Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan is this: Mexico's violence is not from war, but from deadly activities of the country's criminal cartels. Yesterday, at the Armed Conflict Survey's launch in London, IISS Director General John Chipman said Mexico's level of bloodshed was all the more surprising because Mexico is a conflict marked by the absence of artillery, tanks, or combat aviation. Virtually all Mexico's deaths were caused by small arms. The largest number of fatalities occurred in Mexican states that have become key battlegrounds for control between competing, increasingly fragmented cartels, with violence flaring as gangs try to clear areas of rivals so they can monopolize drug trafficking routes. The Middle East in general, and Syria in particular, remained the most lethal regions on earth, with the nearly 6-year-old Syrian conflict claiming a further 50,000 lives. That brings the total number of deaths in Syria's civil and proxy war to an estimated 290,000, almost 3 times the number killed in Bosnia in the early 1990s. Overall, the number of people killed in armed conflicts around the world fell slightly last year to about 157,000 from 167,000 in 2015. Nevertheless, the figure is high compared with the previous decade, while the number of civilians displaced by war continues to rise, which means more refugees. Chipman and the report's authors are not optimistic about the prospects for reducing these levels of violence for a number of reasons. Number one, conflicts are becoming more urban, with siege warfare increasingly common, especially so in Syria. Number two, As new conflicts emerge, old ones tend not to get resolved, but rather subsided into simmering state, capable of boiling over again at any moment. Examples are the low-level simmering war in eastern Ukraine and Turkey's more than 3-decade-old battle with Kurdistan Workers' Party, which exploded again last year into an urbanized insurgency that killed 3,000 people. Number 3, although the Islamic State terrorist organization lost a quarter of its territory and a higher proportion of its fighters last year, the toll on civilians is likely to increase as the group returns to more traditional insurgent tactics. Number 4, the main tool of the international community try to reduce bloodshed. The $8 billion a year United Nations peacekeeping forces are increasingly overstretched and ineffectual. The UN is also, by its nature, too politically riven to carry out effective military operations. And so it says this entry was posted in Afghan war crime, illegal immigration, Iraq, Islamic State, ISIS, ISIL, Middle East, military MSM, Syria war, Syrian refugees, and tagged 2017 Armed Conflict Survey by the International Institute for Strategic Studies, John Chipman, Mexico drug cartels, world's 5 deadliest countries in 2016. And then they've got some comments down here that are kind of interesting in this if you want to pull it up and read those for yourself. The next one is off of BizPack Review, and it says, report, Comey fired for not saying there's no ties. Much covered that, but you can pull it up and read that for yourself if you want to. And the final one that I have is off of Liberty Headlines, and it says, mainstream media ignores 870 arrests in pedophile ring. You don't hear that on the 6 o'clock news, do you? Washington, D.C., after a nearly 2-year investigation, 870 suspected pedophiles have been arrested across the world, and at least 259 sexually abused children have been identified in the wake of major underground online global pedophilia networks being taken down, according to the FBI and European authorities. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and Europol announced the arrest on Friday, only days after court sentenced Florida-based Stephen Chase, founder of the so-called Playpen pedophilia network, to 30 years in prison. The arrest of Chase in December of 2014 was the impetus for a global probe into the users of members-only forum, which culminated in the nearly 900 arrests. Surprisingly, this massive pedophilia bust has failed to crack the pervasive U.S. media censorship regime, as not a single mainstream corporate media source in the United States has reported on this story. Perhaps within those 900 sickos, there are some folks who have enough power not to let their names out. According to a report by German media conglomerate Deutsche Welle, it says Playpen was accessible in what is known as the darknet, where internet users can engage in illegal activities using encryption and anonymity software in an effort to hide their identities. The secret network allowed anonymous users to engage in a forum where they could share photos and videos showing the sexual abuse of children. As part of its investigation called Operation Pacifier, the FBI managed to use malware to seize the Playpen website and server, which allowed authorities to track and identify Playpen users. Law enforcement authorities then took over the network and operated the pedophile site for several weeks, technically making them facilitators of child pornography themselves, hacking and tracking users of the site by installing malware onto their computers. And while virtually everyone applauds the arrest of pedophiles, civil libertarians have pushed back as to the legality and manner in which the FBI operated, rightly claiming that the single search warrant should not allow law enforcement to hack into this and search over 1,000 computers, according to comments made by the EFF, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, regarding Operation Pacifier. The warrant here did not identify any particular person to search or seize, nor did it identify any specific user of the targeted website, the EFF said. It did not even attempt to describe any series or group of particular users. In a statement Friday, Stephen Wilson, head of Europol's European Cybercrime Center, said the case demonstrated how law enforcement needs to use such methods to fight criminals who can hide behind online uh, an, an, anonymization, I guess it is, and encryption programs, meaning to stay anonymous. We need to balance the rights of victims versus the right to privacy, he said. If we operate by 19th century legal principles, then we are unable to effectively tackle crime at the highest level. Essentially, Wilson is trying to claim there is virtue in giving up liberty for safety, a complete and utter fallacy of the highest order, but which underpins the rise of the ever-growing global police state that is built upon a framework of an unflinching military intelligence industrial complex with imperial ambitions. Make no mistake that this is just the latest case to emerge in what is now being dubbed hashtag pedogate. Hashtag pedogate refers to the increasing common recognition of international pedophile rings, which has previously been steadfastly covered up by the Western Fourth State. Speaking to the scope of the problem, after President Trump held a press conference in February in which he detailed his plan to go after the victims of the human trafficking epidemic, former U.S. Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney weighed in on the subject, noting that going after child predators will lead to the downfall of both Republican and Democrats in the United States, as this problem goes all the way to the top. Here's what she actually said, her quote, "Forewarning, this brings down Dems and Repubs. He needs to go straight all the way because this goes to the top." As the Free Thought Project has consistently pointed out, pedophilia among global power elite is rampant. In February, Free Thought Project reported that the police chief recently came forward and confirmed that the former Prime Minister of England, Sir Edward Heath, had raped dozens of children. The department also noted how those within the government helped cover up these crimes. We previously reported on the high-profile elite pedophilia scandal that gripped the UK, with its thousands of victims being unceremoniously swept under the rug, which is indicative of the scope and breadth of this actual problem. In fact, the problem is so rampant in England that officials issued an order last month to stop naming streets and landmarks after local heroes and politicians because they could later be exposed as pedophiles. In the case of the UK, inquiry, historical abuse of thousands of children by political connected elites, celebrities, and politicians was brought to light, with an official inquiry being started, only to have the inquiry crumble after heavy pressure was exerted by high-placed power brokers within the UK establishment. This was almost the exact same scenario as what took place in the United States and what became known as the Franklin Child Ring cover-up, which involved high-level Republicans during the George H.W. Bush administration. Once the FBI took over the investigation from state authorities, it turned into a witch hunt to persecute child victims, going so far as to charge them with perjury in a successful attempt to scare the other 70-plus victims to recant their testimony regarding child sex ring. While the story received a small measure of newspaper coverage, there was a complete blackout of the scandal by mass media. Thus, most Americans have never heard about this scandal that reached all the way to the White House. Domestically, there are relatively few high-level arrests, as any time the elite are mentioned alongside the term pedophile, the Praetorian Guard, aka the corporate media, shout down all those who dare pose any questions about those in power abusing the most vulnerable among us. For example, former U.S. Speaker of the House of Representatives Dennis Hastert, a known serial child rapist, was never charged for his numerous crimes against children, which the FBI knew about and had evidence of for over a decade. According to FBI whistleblower and NewsBud editor-in-chief Sybil Edmonds, says, since 1996, the FBI had tons of information on Hastert, which was gathered in Chicago by FBI's Chicago field office. The incriminating criminal evidence in those files ranged from bribery, extortion, fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement to sexual crimes against minors and participation in foreign operating drug operations. Since 1997, the FBI has had much hard evidence on Hassert gathered in field office. The documented deeds range from espionage to foreign bribery. But that's not all. The FBI also has had hard data on Hassert's sexual violations outside the United States. The involved countries include Vietnam, Thailand, Turkey, and Morocco, among others. This also included sexual favors as means of foreign bribery. Interestingly, the CIA had been documenting those sexual activities for many years, and not only on Hassert, but on many others, elected and appointed. Edmonds has noted that the intelligence apparatus utilizes the damning information they maintain on these public official pedophilic activities as a means of controlling public policy decisions from the shadows. The fact that Hassert rose to Speaker of the House when his activities were well documented by the FBI and CIA highlights precisely how intelligence services utilize total information awareness to influence and control elected officials. Additionally, NSA whistleblower Russell Tice, who was key source in the 2005 New York Times report, which blew the lid off the Bush administration's use of warrantless wiretapping, has publicly confirmed the targeting and blackmailing of top government officials and military officers, including the Supreme Court justices, high-ranking generals, Colin Powell, and other State Department personnel. In an appearance on Edmonds' Boiling Frogs Post blog, Tice stated that he held NSA wiretap orders targeting numerous members of the U.S. government, including one for a young senator from Illinois named Barack Obama. In 2004, one of the papers that I held in my hand was to wiretap a bunch of numbers associated with 40-some-year-old senator from Illinois. You wouldn't happen to know where that guy lives now, would you? It's a big White House in Washington, D.C. That's who the NSA went after. That's the President of the United States now. Tice added that he also saw orders to spy on Hillary Clinton Senators John McCain and Dianne Feinstein, then Secretary of State Colin Powell, General David Petraeus, and current Supreme Court justices. Pedophilia and child pornography does deep state have on all those politicians like they had on Hassert? It's not. Is it not possible, indeed likely, that the shadow state maintains this information on individuals for sole purpose of controlling them? Make no mistake that illegal spying and wholesale collection of American data allows for that very control system whereby the elected officials who appear to be in control of our state apparatus are nothing more than puppets who are blackmailed over their depraved past and bribed by the unelected power centers that pull the strings from the shadows. That's all I have for you this morning. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that. That way you'll stay informed. Have a great day.